go to a hearing that is taking place of our top intelligence officials, including DNI lead Tulsi Gabbard. And this hearing is actually being led by Virginia Senator Mark Warner. So we will go ahead and take you to the moments in which this had begun and listen to the Senator of Virginia, the vice chairman of this particular committee, ask questions of our nation's top intelligence officials.
Now, where is the authority for you to involve yourself in a domestic law enforcement activity?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I appreciate the question. As you know, I've addressed every issue you've raised in detail in a letter, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it in this forum. As you stated, Congress provided by statute, ODNI, with the responsibility of election security and counterintelligence in 2021. As you also know, ODNI has purview and oversight.
I know the history very well, but could you just
I am addressing the question. ODNI also has purview and overview over two domestic-related agencies, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, both of which have purview over election security responsibilities to ensure the integrity of our elections. I want to correct one of your statements that you've made multiple times, which is false. I did not participate in a law enforcement activity, nor would I, because that does not exist within my authorities.
You were present on the scene. Are the photos of you on the scene false?
I was at Fulton County, sir, at the request of the president, and to work with the FBI to observe this action that had long been awaited. I was not aware of what was in the warrant or was not in the warrant.
And what was the president's specific request for you to go to? What was the specific request that was made by the president for you to show up in Fulton County?
To go and observe the FBI's activities on this issue.
So why?
When you look at the fort, your question, sir.
Do you have the answer why the president was knowing about this affidavit before it was even served?
I'm not aware that the president knew about an affidavit before it was served.
Then why was he sending you to Fulton County?
This occurred the day that the FBI had it approved, their warrant approved by a local judge, and they began to execute this. To address your question, sir, about the foreign nexus question, in order for us to better understand the vulnerabilities in our election systems that may exist today as we look to 2026, and yes, we are very focused on trying to make sure that this election is one that the American people have
Director
faith.
Gabbard, I've got a number of questions. Director Gabbard, I have a number of questions. Let me ask my next question, please. You have not provided any of the required reports or briefings to this committee on foreign interference. This is the first threat assessment since 2017 that didn't even mention foreign interference. Last year, when you were already confirmed, it mentioned it at high level. Are you saying there is no foreign threat to our elections in the midterms this year?
As I stated in the outset of my remarks, this year's annual threat assessment matches the prioritization of threats and
Please answer the question, yes or no. Is there foreign threat interference to our elections this year?
Laid out.
Are there foreign?
Please allow me to answer the question, sir. The intelligence community has been and continues to remain focused on any collection and intelligence products that show a potential foreign threat for those who are seeking
so far there has been none then, because you've made no reports. Excuse me, ma'am. If you want to ask the questions, you should have stayed in Congress. Please answer the questions.
I didn't ask you a question, sir. I'm trying to answer your questions.
So you're saying the failure to provide any reports or the failure to have any mention of a foreign threat assessment, I would draw the conclusion there must be no foreign threat to our elections in 26. So that brings me a question that I have for both you, ma'am, and Director Patel. There are reports that in 2020, the president was preparing an executive order to potentially seize ballots or bring in federal forces. There is a published report that there is a similar EO being drafted right now about 2026, citing China. Director Patel, do you have any knowledge of that draft EO?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I do not, sir.
Director Gabbard, do you have any?
I do not.
Thank you. Let me move to Iran. Now, I understand, and I appreciated Director Gabbard, your comments yesterday about agreeing that the president has sole authority I guess, in his bones to declare whether something is an imminent threat. I didn't agree with your friend, Mr. Kent, but I didn't, again, I agreed with him yesterday on the fact that there was no imminent threat. I guess what I'm concerned about, one thing is, even in your printed testimony today on page 6, and your last paragraph on page 6, as a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated. There's been no efforts to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. You omitted that paragraph from your oral opening. Was that because the president had said there was an imminent threat 2 weeks?
No, sir, I recognize that the time was running long, and I skipped through some of the
So
portions
you chose to take
of my oral delivered remarks.
You chose
sir.
to omit the parts that contradict the president. The president continues to say as well that, you know, he had no idea, was shocked that the Iranians had moved to take over the Strait of Hormuz. Did you provide any intelligence that would say that it would be that it was not likely that the Iranians would try to move on the strait?
I'm not aware of those remarks, and I think those of us here at the table can point to the fact that historically the Iranians have always threatened to leverage their control over
Why would the
Strait
president
of
say he was
Hormuz.
amazed? Or,
I'm not aware of those remarks.
What about the comments the president made that thought that he was surprised again, reports that Iran struck the adjacent Gulf states?
Again, I'm not aware of those remarks. We have
Well,
been
let me
and
ask you this.
continue to
Did
provide
you brief the president? Did you brief the president?
Decisions.
Did you brief the president if he starts a war of choice that the likely result would be that Iran would strike adjacent Gulf nations and close the Strait of Hormuz? Did you brief him on those two facts that I think have been consistently the assumptions of the intelligence community?
I have not and won't divulge internal conversations. I will say that those of us within the intelligence community continue to provide the president with all of the best objective intelligence available to inform his decisions.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, you just testified that ISIS and al-Qaeda are significantly weaker. And reflecting that view, you have devoted declining budgets, personnel, and emphasis on countering terrorism. Yet, the fact is that ISIS is growing and operating in Somalia, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, and Iraq. Al-Qaeda is surging in Afghanistan, the Arabian Peninsula, and throughout Central Africa. The Houthis in Yemen and the rest of the Iranian proxies remain a serious threat. Focusing, as you have done, on great power competitors seems to have diverted resources from the fight against terrorism, a fight that's very much still going on. As I have said repeatedly, it is terrorists who want and can kill Americans today. We've just seen the terrorists in Michigan attacking the synagogue. In addition, it appears that a more stovepiped effort in the Intelligence Committee has returned. How are you ensuring that Americans are safe and that you are countering counterterrorism threats to our homeland and to U.S. citizens abroad?
Thank you, Senator Collins, for your question and the opportunity to clarify the comments in my opening statement. My reference to the size of ISIS and al-Qaeda organizationally is smaller and weaker than it was during its peak over a decade ago. However, I completely concur with your remarks about the threat of ISIS, al-Qaeda, and other Islamist terrorist groups around the world and the threat that they pose to U.S. interest service members and directly to the homeland. Our ODNI National Counterterrorism Center has been at the forefront of ramping up, and I believe is more active today than it has been certainly in a long time. We are dedicating every resource that they ask for, as well as the counterterrorism elements across the IC, to make sure that we are never taking our eye off of this persistent threat to the American people. The change in tactics based on the current environment is something we continue to be most concerned about. We are seeing less indicators of large-scale, organized, complex threats or attacks, and instead efforts focused on individuals either who have been radicalized by Islamist propaganda and may not have ever had contact with ISIS or al-Qaeda, for example, and others who have had contact, of which we are able to have more indications of. This remains and will be, and as we come to present our budgets to you, a foremost and primary priority. The integration across the intelligence community on the counterterrorism threat occurs every single day, with our teams working very effectively together to thwart terrorist attacks as we have over the last year.
Director Patel, I'm going to follow up on this issue with you. ISIS targets potential recruits online through social media, gaming platforms, encrypted messaging apps. ISIS even facilitated a network online to smuggle illegal immigrants into the United States. Since April 2021, there have been more than 52 jihadist-inspired cases across 30 states. What measures is the FBI taking to prevent foreign terrorist organizations from recruiting or influencing Americans, while also ensuring the protection of individuals' right to privacy?
Thank you, Senator. And I think you said it best. They have transferred their capabilities in terms of personal recruitments to online recruitments, which makes any terrorist organization, including ISIS, all the more powerful. What we have done is extended and expanded resources to environments like the Threat Screening Center, which allows us to collect biometric capabilities from all over the world. We've had a double-digit increase in that and a double-digit increase in intelligence production. But what we've also done in the CT space specifically is expand the number of agents and intel analysts that go online and detect based on our biometric capabilities and intelligence that we have from the interagency. And what that leads us to is what we saw in December of last year, Senator, where we at the FBI stopped 4 terrorist attacks, 4 in California, Texas, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, 3 of which were ISIS-inspired. We were able to detect these individuals both online and in person using our covert platforms, and we shuttered a bombing campaign in Southern California and 2 mass casualty events for New Year's Eve.
Director Gabbard, the intelligence community did not detect an extremely serious breach affecting our telecommunications industry due to the Chinese Salt Typhoon incursions for a very long time. In addition, the Chinese Volt Typhoon threat poses a terrible threat to U.S. critical infrastructure. Specific sectors throughout the United States have been overlooked and underprotected. What are you doing to deal with the threat to critical infrastructure, our electric grid, our communication systems, given this huge miss by our talented intelligence community?
Thank you, Senator Collins, for the question. Working with our partners at NSA and others to detect these threats and how they may be evolved or developing is something we're continuing to work on. Building strong partnerships with the private sector, whether it be in the telecom industry, the financial sector, the healthcare sector, the energy sector, is something that I'm rebuilding. We've seen some of these ongoing relationships falter over previous years. I've personally been astounded by some of the conversations I've had with leaders from these industries who are just as concerned as we are about these threats to our critical infrastructure. and yet don't feel that they have the connectivity or the information to be able to secure their own infrastructure. So in short, building those stronger partnerships, integrating and being able to share information intelligence where we can is critical for us to be able to secure our country from these threats.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, last year your agencies testified, and I quote, Iran's large conventional forces are capable of inflicting substantial damage to an attacker, executing regional strikes, and disrupting shipping, particularly energy supplies, through the Strait of Hormuz. In other words, every problem we're seeing now was not only foreseeable, but was actually predicted by the intelligence agencies. So, Director, in the lead up to the start of this war 3 weeks ago, did the intelligence agencies stick to their assessment that in response to an attack, the Iranians had the capability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz?
Thank you, Senator Wyden. The intelligence community has continued to provide the president and his team with the intelligence related to this operation in Iran before and on an ongoing basis.
So right now,
You can see there Tulsi Gabbard being questioned, grilled there by senators on the intel and the advice that her and her team gave to the president prior to and during this current war with Iran. And her earlier saying that she's not going to get into the details of what she and her team told the president. But you can hear there from at least Senator Warner, there were some things in which recently have come out by the president saying that he was shocked by a few different results of the war here recently, that Warner and he mentions others within the national security intelligence community say would be pretty much solid thoughts going into this particular conflict and war, or assumptions, I should say.